My parents used my Black Friday pay raise to pay off my sister's credit card, so I bought a one-way ticket they never saw coming. I'm a 20-year-old guy, and I can still remember the way my breath fogged up my mask that Black Friday, sweat prickling my neck. The echo of barcode scanners, customers clawing at the last TVs like their lives depended on it. For 3 years straight, I'd spent Thanksgiving leftovers in the break room, stacking boxes and swallowing my resentment, just so my parents could tell people at church how responsible their son was. I never saw a penny of it. Every paycheck seemed to dissolve into gas bills, groceries, or my sister Riley's emergencies. I was the family's invisible ATM, and for the longest time, I didn't even realize how much that ate at me. But this year was different. I'd pulled 2 doubles, skipped my only day off, and even stepped in when a coworker walked out mid-shift. My manager, a gruff guy named Mike, caught me shelving laptops while everyone else was on break. He clapped me on the back and said, "You're the only one who gives a damn, you know that?" A week later, I got a slip in my locker. Pay raise. It wasn't much, just enough to make my heart stutter. For the first time, I felt like someone actually saw the effort I put in. That night, when I sat in the back of the bus, knuckles aching, I pulled out my phone and started browsing vacation rentals and discount laptops. Just looking, just dreaming, because for the first time in forever, it felt like maybe something was possible for me. The city lights blurred past the window, and for a split second, I let myself imagine being more than just the guy everyone counted on. But never counted as, I didn't know it then. But that little spark was about to start a fire in my life that no one saw coming. Sometimes I wonder if I was born with a discount sticker on my forehead. I've always been the budget son. My parents liked to joke about it at family gatherings, how I was low maintenance, easy to please. Meanwhile, Riley, my older sister, could break her phone, crash a car, or flunk a class, and my parents would move mountains to fix it. When it came to me, everything was a negotiation. Can it wait till next month? Do you really need that? It wasn't even about the money, not really. It was about never being a priority. I remember once when I was 13, my birthday fell right after Riley's midterms. She wanted a new laptop, and I wanted, hell, I don't even remember anymore. All I got was a slice of leftover cake and a pat on the back while my parents hovered over Riley, worried about her future. That's the kind of stuff that sticks with you, even if you pretend it doesn't. This year, though, the pay raise felt like a sign. Maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Over dinner, I tried to tell my parents. I waited for the right moment, my heart hammering while Riley scrolled through her phone, barely looking up. "I got a raise," I said, half expecting applause or at least a smile. My mom nodded, said, "That's nice, honey," then asked Riley if she'd thought about grad school. My dad just mumbled something about inflation. The whole moment lasted less than a minute. Afterward, I sat on the porch steps, listening to the faint buzz of their laughter inside. It felt like watching a party through a window you're not invited to. I should have known not to get my hopes up, but there was still this tiny, stupid piece of me that thought things might finally change. What I didn't know was that Riley had heard every word, and the countdown to my next disappointment had already started. After that dinner, I buried myself in work, letting the noise of the store drown out my disappointment. The idea of actually treating myself felt dangerous, like sneaking dessert before dinner. Every spare second, I scrolled through used laptop listings and cheap flights on my phone, little windows into a life where I came first, just once. My fingertips would hover over the Buy Now button, but I never clicked. Guilt always won. I was raised to believe that wanting something for myself was selfish, especially when Riley always seemed to need more. One night, I came home late and caught Riley in the hallway. She was standing outside my door, phone in hand, pretending to look for something. "Hey," she said, her voice just a bit too sweet. "Heard you got a raise." "That's cool. Got any plans?" Her smile made my skin itch. I mumbled something about maybe getting a new laptop, watching her eyes flick to my battered old one on the desk. She leaned against my doorframe, arms crossed. "You know, Mom and Dad are really proud of you. They talk about you all the time." It sounded like a lie, and I almost laughed. Instead, I just nodded, feeling the familiar pressure to not make things weird. Riley finally wandered off, her phone lighting up with another notification. I shut my door and locked it, something I never used to do. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling, my mind ran wild with what-ifs. What if I really did it, bought a ticket somewhere, left the chores and the "can you help me" texts behind. For the first time, I felt the ache of wanting more than my role as the family fallback. I didn't know it yet, but Riley's curiosity wasn't just nosiness. It was the first ripple in a wave I never saw coming. I drifted off thinking about freedom, not realizing how close I was to losing even the little I had. A few days later, my mom called us into the living room after dinner. The TV was off, always a bad sign. My dad sat in his recliner, hands folded, and Riley curled up on the couch, knees pressed to her chest. The air felt heavy, like the room knew something I didn't. Mom cleared her throat. "We need to talk as a family." My gut twisted. In our house, family meeting usually meant I'd done something wrong or Riley needed saving. Riley wouldn't look at me, just picked at her nail polish. Mom's voice was tight. "Your sister's had a little trouble with her credit card." She paused, glancing at Dad, who stared at the floor. "She's racked up a pretty big balance, accidentally, of course. You know how these banks are." I blinked. Riley bit her lip, eyes shining. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to get this bad." Mom went on, her words getting faster. "We thought about it a lot, and we have a plan that's best for everyone." I felt my stomach drop. "Your Black Friday pay, plus your new raise, it'll cover Riley's card. We'll pay you back as soon as we can." Dad finally looked up. "It's what families do, son." The room spun. I tried to speak, but my tongue felt thick. "But that's—" I stopped, swallowing hard. Riley's eyes darted to me, full of crocodile tears. "I promise I'll fix this," she said. Mom squeezed my shoulder. "We knew you'd understand." I wanted to scream, to shout that it wasn't fair, that I'd earned that money for once. But I just sat there, my chest burning, feeling smaller with every second. My plans, my laptop, my maybe vacation evaporated. The decision was already made. My words didn't matter, and as the meeting ended, I realized I'd never stood a chance. My paycheck was never really mine. It never had been. The days after the family meeting felt like moving through wet cement. I went to work, clocked in and out, but everything tasted bitter. At home, my parents acted like nothing had changed. Mom would toss a "thanks again, sweetheart" over her shoulder as she made dinner, as if her gratitude could patch over the hole in my chest. Dad whistled while watching TV, legs kicked up, as if my sacrifice was just the natural order of things. Riley, on the other hand, could barely look at me. She'd slip in late, leave early, always on her phone, sometimes giggling at group chats, sometimes just staring out the window. One evening, I caught her coming home with a big shopping bag, something from a trendy boutique downtown. I stared at it, at her, at the way she ducked past me without a word. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. That night, after everyone went to bed, I opened my banking app. My Black Friday pay and overtime were already gone, transferred out for the family. No note. No promise. Just vanished. The sense of betrayal gnawed at me. I'd worked every miserable shift, skipped every hangout, all for this? To watch my dreams slip away so Riley could waltz around in new boots? I started snapping at everyone, my patience worn thin. "Everything okay?" Mom asked one morning, pouring coffee like it was any other day. "Just tired," I said, voice flat. She didn't ask again. Inside, I was screaming. But outside, I wore the same mask I always did, the quiet, reliable son who never made waves. The more invisible I tried to be, the more I saw the cracks in the family facade. I didn't know it yet. But those cracks were about to split wide open, and this time, I wouldn't be the one holding them together. Every time I tried to talk about what happened, it felt like slamming my head against a wall padded with smiles. I came home late one night after another exhausting shift and found Mom in the kitchen humming to herself. I cleared my throat. "Can we talk about the money?" I asked, the words dry and awkward. She set down her mug with a little clink, her face softening into that gentle, practiced concern. "We've always supported you, you know," she said. "Don't start acting like a victim now."
"You know we love you, right?"
Her voice had that sing-song edge, like she was soothing a toddler, not her adult son. "Your sister just made a mistake. We're a family. Families help each other." Dad chimed in from the other room without even looking up from his phone. "Be grateful you're in a position to help, son." Not everyone can say that. Riley avoided me completely. No eye contact, no thanks. At dinner, if I so much as sighed, Mom would shoot me a warning glance. One night, when I tried to say it wasn't fair, she cut me off. We never complain when we do things for you. Her words hit like cold water. You're being selfish, honestly. Maybe you need to learn a little empathy. I started to question myself. Was I really selfish? Was I making a big deal out of nothing? Every time I tried to stand up for myself, the conversation twisted until I felt like the villain. Riley's silence grew heavier, my parents' smiles tighter. The house felt smaller with every passing day, but underneath the guilt and confusion, something new was growing, a bitter little knot of anger I couldn't ignore anymore. I started wondering if maybe I wasn't the problem. Maybe it was time they saw just how selfish I could really be, and that thought, dangerous as it was, began to feel like the only thing keeping me alive. It all came to a head on Riley's birthday. My paycheck, my raise, my overtime, they'd all vanished into her debt, and yet here was Mom, carrying in a bakery cake in a box wrapped with shiny blue paper. I sat at the kitchen table watching Riley pretend to be surprised. "Oh my God, you guys," she squealed, peeling off the ribbon. Inside was a brand new phone, top of the line, latest model. The same one I'd once daydreamed about back when I still let myself hope. My fingers curled around my coffee mug so tightly I thought it might crack. "Seriously?" I blurted. The room fell silent, everyone staring. Dad frowned, Riley looked away, and Mom gave me the sort of smile that never reached her eyes. "Don't ruin your sister's day," she said quietly. Something in me snapped. "You used my money for this," I said, my voice low, trembling. "I worked every holiday, every weekend. You told me Riley was struggling, but you're buying her gifts with my paycheck?" Riley shot up defensive. "It's not like that. I didn't ask for this." But I saw the guilt in her face, the way she hugged that phone to her chest. Dad slammed his palm on the table. "That's enough. You're being dramatic," Mom's voice cracked. "We just wanted to do something nice for her. Why can't you ever be happy for your family?" I stood up, heart pounding. "Because no one here is ever happy for me," I said, and it felt like pulling a splinter from my soul. Riley stormed off, tears in her eyes. Dad muttered something about ungratefulness. Mom just sat there, shaking her head, like I was the disappointment. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the silence ringing in my ears. For the first time, I didn't want to make things right. I wanted out. The next morning, I woke to silence, the kind that seeps under your door and settles in your chest. No one spoke to me. The smell of pancakes drifted from the kitchen, but I knew better than to join them. I lay in bed scrolling through my phone, forcing myself not to care about the muffled laughter and clinking plates down the hall. The ache in my chest was heavier than hunger. Later, when I finally ventured out, I found a pamphlet on my bed. Family Therapy. Healing Starts at Home. I snorted, thumbing through the glossy pages. It was a not-so-subtle message. I was the problem that needed fixing. On the kitchen table, Mom had left a note. "Let's talk when you're ready to be positive." Dad had already left for work. Riley's door was closed, music pounding behind it. I wanted someone to admit they'd hurt me. I wanted an apology, a sign they actually saw me. Instead, I got platitudes and avoidance. Riley's Instagram was full of cheerful selfies and blessed captions. In every photo, her new phone gleamed like a trophy. I wondered if my parents saw those posts, or if pretending was easier. When Mom came home, she acted like nothing had happened. She talked about work, about dinner, about Riley's plans for the weekend. Not once did she mention me or the fight, or the way I'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. The house felt colder, like even the walls were choosing sides. That evening, I stood at my window, watching the neighbor's dog chase its tail in the fading light. I tried to remember the last time anyone had chased me, had wanted me just because. The world outside kept turning, indifferent to my loneliness. I realized then, I could disappear, and my family wouldn't even notice, unless they needed something. A week drifted by in that numb fog. Every day the same until the universe decided to give me a wake-up call. I'd gone into Riley's room to grab my charger. She'd stolen it again, her usual move. Her laptop was open on the bed, and before I could turn away, I saw an email notification flash across the screen. "Thanks for your recent order." The total was hundreds of dollars. Curiosity burned hotter than guilt. I glanced through her tabs, designer clothes, expensive makeup, delivery orders. This wasn't desperation. Riley's accident was a months-long shopping spree, not some bank's cruel trick. My pulse hammered as I pieced together the truth. She hadn't maxed out her card to survive, she'd maxed it out to keep up appearances. And when it all blew up, my parents bailed her out, no questions asked. The next part was a gut punch. A folder full of emails CC'd to Mom and Dad, full of jokes about borrowing from the family slush fund. They knew. They'd all known. I dropped the charger, my hands shaking. Rage crawled up my spine, hot, electric, clean. For years, I'd been the safety net, the background character, the human ATM, but they'd never even pretended to hide it. This wasn't about love. It was about convenience. That night, I started a new savings account online, one only I could access. Every tip, every odd job, every penny that didn't have to go to bills, I stashed it away. I stopped mentioning overtime, stopped showing pay stubs, stopped telling anyone when I'd be home. It felt risky, even paranoid, but it was the only thing that dulled the sting of betrayal. I began counting days, imagining a future where I wasn't the fallback plan, where my work went toward building a life that belonged to me and no one else. But even then, I had no idea just how far they were willing to go to keep me trapped. From the outside, it probably looked like things were back to normal. At dinner, my parents would laugh about the news or argue over TV shows, pretending nothing was off. I played along, but inside every word felt like sandpaper. Riley had the nerve to act sweet again, breezing into the kitchen with her fake smile face, asking if I wanted to split pizza, as if she hadn't just helped herself to my future. I stopped answering her texts. I started picking up extra shifts without telling anyone, coming home late and leaving early. Every tip, every extra dollar went straight into my secret account. I hid receipts, passwords, everything. The more I kept to myself, the more my family pushed back, accusing me of being cold, of shutting them out. "You used to be so helpful," Mom sighed one night, her eyes glistening like I'd actually hurt her. The old me would have caved, apologized, tried harder. Not now. Now I just nodded and let the silence fill the room. I did what needed to be done, nothing more. No more picking up groceries, no more tech support, no more cleaning up after everyone's messes. If they noticed, they never said. Sometimes I'd stand in the shower and let the water run hot until my skin burned, just to feel something that wasn't anger. Other times I'd walk the block twice before going inside, trying to breathe in enough cold air to numb the resentment. My dreams were full of running, packing, moving, starting over and over, but the more distance I put between us, the more it felt like I was living with strangers. The house got quieter, but the tension just hummed louder. I didn't realize it. But my quiet rebellion was about to spark a betrayal that would cut deeper than anything before. I thought I'd hit my limit, that I couldn't feel any more betrayed. I was wrong. It happened on a Monday, gray sky, half awake, getting ready for work. Mom knocked on my door, voice bright. "Can you come out for a second?" She had a stack of mail in her hand. "This one's for you," she said, passing over an envelope from my bank. I didn't think much of it until I tore it open and saw the words, "Balance, $0. My college fund, years of birthday money, odd job cash, even some of my old paychecks, all supposedly set aside for my future, was gone. Vanished. I stared at the statement, willing it to make sense, heat crawling up my neck. I confronted Mom. "Where's my college money?" My voice barely sounded like mine. She avoided my eyes. "We needed it for some urgent bills, that's all. We'll pay it back, don't worry." Riley shuffled into the hallway, face pale. She wouldn't meet my gaze either. "I'm sorry," she whispered, almost too soft to hear. I pressed, voice rising. "You told me that money was for my future." "For school, for getting out," Dad barked from the living room. "Don't talk to your mother like that." We did what we had to do. Riley's in trouble, we're all in trouble. This is what family means. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to break the silence that threatened to swallow me whole. Instead, I just stared at the paper in my hand, hands shaking. That was it. My last safety net, ripped out from under me, and not a single person cared enough to ask how I felt. For the first time, I knew. Really knew. They'd never see me as more than a resource. I'd officially hit rock bottom. But as I stood there, numb and shaking, another thought took root. If I wanted out, it had to be now. That night I couldn't sleep. The house felt colder than ever, every creak and whisper reminding me I was just a placeholder, useful but invisible. I stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows crawl, my mind racing with anger and heartbreak and a quiet, growing resolve. Around 3 a.m., I pulled out my phone and logged into my secret account. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I opened a travel app and stared at the blinking cursor on the destination box, my finger hovering. For the first time, the fear of staying felt bigger than the fear of leaving. I chose a city far enough that nobody could show up on my doorstep unannounced. Bought a one-way ticket for the end of the week. I packed in silence, taking only what I'd paid for: clothes, the battered laptop, a stack of dog-eared books. Everything else, the memories, the shame, the bitterness, I left behind. Before sunrise, I scribbled a note. Don't call. I need a life that's mine. No apology, no explanation. I left it on my pillow and closed my bedroom door with a soft click, knowing nobody would be up to hear me go. Stepping outside, I breathed in the sharp air, feeling my heart race with a mix of dread and relief. I didn't know what waited for me on the other side. Maybe a cheap apartment, maybe sleeping on a friend's couch, maybe nothing but the freedom to fail or start over. But for the first time in my life, every choice would be mine. As the taxi pulled up, headlights cutting the darkness, I looked back at the only home I'd ever known. I didn't feel nostalgia, just the odd, peaceful certainty that whatever happened next would be my story. I watched the house disappear in the rear view, my hands trembling, wondering if anyone would even notice I was gone. Freedom didn't taste the way I'd pictured it. It was raw and jagged, like stepping into cold water. The first few nights, I crashed on my friend Evan's worn-out couch, my backpack wedged under my head. Every sound, the neighbors fighting, the traffic, Evan's snoring, felt sharper, realer, like the world was finally turned up to full volume. I kept waiting for my phone to buzz, for someone from home to call or text. Days passed. Nothing. At first, guilt gnawed at me, sharp and relentless. I'd stare at the cracks in Evan's ceiling, replaying everything. Was I selfish? Was I the villain in my own family's story? Sometimes I'd scroll through old photos, Riley with her arms slung around me, Mom grinning at some church picnic. I'd remember the handful of good days and wonder if I'd blown it all up for nothing. Evan tried to help. You did what you had to do, man, he'd say, tossing me a soda and the TV remote. They treated you like a doormat. You finally said enough. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel proud, or at least relieved. Instead, I drifted in that weird space between freedom and fear, missing things I knew weren't real. But every day I woke up in that cramped apartment, the guilt loosened a little. I started picking up odd jobs, dishwashing, unloading trucks, making enough to pay my own way even if it wasn't much. Each paycheck felt like a tiny step towards something I couldn't name yet. The hardest part wasn't starting over, it was believing I deserved the chance. But as I watched the sun rise through a dirty window, I realized something else. My family could ignore me, erase me, pretend I'd never mattered. But they couldn't stop me from building a life where I finally did. And for the first time, that thought made me smile. It took 3 weeks for my family to reach out. A thick envelope arrived at Evan's place, my name scratched on the front in Mom's careful handwriting. Inside was a letter, 3 pages, front and back, blue ink smudged where she'd pressed too hard. I read it standing in the doorway, breath held. We still love you, but you owe us a conversation, she wrote. She listed every meal she'd ever cooked, every ride she'd given me, every sacrifice they'd made. We know you're hurting, but this isn't the way to heal a family. Riley's struggling too. Please come home and let's talk about this as adults. We can't fix what we don't discuss. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge how they'd emptied my account, how they'd made my future small to save Riley's mistakes. It was all about what I owed them, what I'd ruined by leaving. Dad scrawled a postscript. We're family. We don't just quit when things get hard. Call us. I turned the pages over and over in my hands, searching for the thing I needed. A sliver of regret, an admission, anything. Instead, I got a catalog of debts, a bill for being alive. The anger bubbled up again, sharp and clean. For years, I'd been the family's silent insurance plan. Now they missed what I gave, not who I was. Evan read the letter over my shoulder, shaking his head. They're just trying to pull you back in, man. Don't let them. I slipped the letter into the bottom of my bag, unresolved. I wasn't ready to forgive, and I wasn't ready to answer. The silence between us stretched wider, but for the first time, it didn't scare me. If anything, it felt like freedom. In the weeks that followed, I started telling my story online. At first, it was just a post in some late-night forum, anonymous, raw, every word a confession I never could have said out loud at home. I poured it out. The years of being the family's backup plan, the money siphoned away for Riley's mistakes, the suffocating guilt, the escape. I didn't expect anyone to care. But when I woke up, there were dozens of replies. Then hundreds. Golden child here. You're not alone. My parents did the same, took my college fund from my brother's rehab. Your pain is real. Your story matters. I read every message, heart pounding. For the first time, strangers saw me, really saw me. People DM'd their own stories, shared advice, offered solidarity. It felt like collective therapy. Every comment chipped away at the shame and isolation I'd been carrying for years. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't even unique, just another scarred survivor of a broken system. I started writing more. Threads, replies, long posts on nights I couldn't sleep. Every Me Too made the past seem a little less monstrous. My voice, shaky at first, grew stronger. I found friends in unexpected places. People who checked in on me just because. Sometimes when the guilt crept back, I'd open those replies and remind myself, my worth isn't measured by how much I can sacrifice. I don't exist just to be the fallback. My story can be ugly and honest and still belong to me. The healing wasn't fast, and it wasn't easy. But I was building something new, a narrative where I had power, where I set the terms. And for the first time, I started to believe I deserved better. Still, there was one thing left to do. One final act to close the chapter on my old life. Last week, I took a final, quiet step toward closure. I'd been thinking about my family's letter, about the way they tallied every sacrifice as if love was a debt to be paid. I wanted to answer, but not with more explanations or another plea for understanding. So I did something they'd never expect. I mailed them a receipt, not a letter, not a gift, just a simple, crisp receipt from the electronics store. It showed a full refund for the gifts I'd bought them over the years, gifts I'd scraped and saved for, only to watch them gather dust or get handed off to Riley. I circled the refunded amount in red marker. Beneath it, I wrote 3 words. Here's your gratitude. No signature. No return address. Just the truth sent straight to their mailbox. As I dropped the envelope in the post, my hands shook, but not with regret. With relief. I knew it wouldn't change them. They'd probably see it as petty, maybe even cruel. But for me, it was the last thread tying me to their version of the story. That night, I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't check my phone. I didn't reread old messages or imagine dramatic confrontations. Instead, I sat on Evan's fire escape with a mug of coffee, watching the city move. Cars and people going about their lives, each one carrying their own scars, their own escapes. I realized I wasn't healed. Not yet, but I was free. I had drawn my own line, said in the only way I could that my worth wasn't up for negotiation. I had given them the closure they needed, even if it wasn't what they wanted. And as the sun came up, I let myself imagine a future I'd finally chosen for myself. One receipt, one boundary, at a time.